And now let's get some more analysis, and we are joined by Makram Rabah, Assistant Professor of the Department of History at the American University of Beirut. Welcome to our program, Professor.
Good afternoon.
I'm sure you've experienced some of these declining trends. A number of major airlines have suspended their flights to Lebanon. How concerned are you about this latest move?
Well, basically, this is what is to be expected whenever we have conflict with Israel. Previously, in 2006, the Israelis targeted the tarmac at Beirut International Airport, and thus they decommissioned it. Now what we are seeing that many of the airlines, because of the rocketing prices of insurance on their planes, especially in times of conflict, have simply decided to opt out. Even the Lebanese national carrier, the Middle East Airlines, cannot keep up with the demand on people leaving. It's quite interesting that the escalations happened at the end of the summer, or at least when people from the diaspora are getting ready to go back home, especially that many of the schools will commence soon, especially in the Gulf states. So in a way, Lebanon has been isolated for a while, but now it was more or less a kind of a wake-up call that conflict is at our doorstep. The Lebanese in general would not have fled if it was the beginning of summer, but because it's the end of summer, as many of the people you interviewed have indicated, they have simply decided to just go back to their new adopted homes.
Well, as we mentioned just now, tourism is such a big part of Lebanon's economy, taking about a quarter of its GDP. A decline in tourist arrivals and revenue will certainly impact Lebanon's economic growth in 2024. But the extent of damage will depend on the scope of the conflict. What possible scenarios do you envision?
Well, certainly, you cannot talk about tourism when you don't have a government, you don't have a proper infrastructure. What we've been experiencing is what we call a kind of a mirage. People assume that this is tourism, but when Lebanese come back home, this is not counted as tourism. We were hoping that ultimately Lebanon's tourism sector will go back to normal, and we can actually attract people from abroad, be it the Chinese, be it the Americans, and more so the Arab Gulf, who have invested heavily previously in Lebanon's economy, as is. And because of this so-called jerk in the tourism sector, I think the repercussions will not be felt immediately. It will be felt down the road, especially that the government itself does nothing but observe and claim that it's actually trying to elevate the situation, whereas in fact, the Lebanese and particularly people who are investing heavily in this sector are paying the price.
Well, it remains to be seen the other consequences that this regional conflict will have. Thank you so much, Mr. Makram Rabah, for sharing with us your perspectives. Appreciate your input.